Hi, good day, guys, and thanks to all of you who are watching us. We are at day 2 of CryptFest. I'm Arravind, co-founder and CEO of Cryptobilis, and today I'll be moderating one of the best and most anticipated topic of the event. NFT, is it a hype, FUD, or here to stay? So joining us today are three amazing gentlemen who are absolutely crushing it in the space. Firstly, we have Mr. Jeth Ang, who is the COO of Breeder DAO. Breeder DAO is an early stage blockchain startup which focuses on breeding, crafting, and creating the best plato and digital asset in the metaverse. Next, we have Mr. Mohan, the Director of Digital Creative Content at Malaysian Digital Economic Corporation, MDEC, where he helps drive the mission to develop the digital creative content industry in Malaysia. His expertise in the digital content space includes leading team in game development, game commercialization, and ecosystem building. And also with us is Mr. Irsyad, a technology and innovation enthusiast with over 10 years of expertise in operating systems, IoT embedded devices, and web application development. He is now the co-founder and CEO of Pentas.io, the largest NFT marketplace in Malaysia, empowering digital culture and heritage. Welcome to the show, guys.
Welcome. Yes.
Hi. Hi.
Thank you for the invite. Thank you for hosting.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so to all viewers, a little disclaimer. All opinions shared here are not to be taken as financial advice. We advise you to conduct your own studies and evaluate your risk appetite before diving into the space. Okay, so let's begin. So slightly before we address the elephant in the room, to those of you who are new to the space, all right, NFT stands for non-fungible token, which are one-of-a-kind digital assets in the digital world that can be bought and sold like any other piece of property, but does not have a tangible form of their own. These digital tokens can be thought of as certificates of ownership for virtual or physical assets, all verified by the blockchain. So it can also be used to represent real-world assets such as art, collectibles, or real estate, which ultimately makes them tradable. All right. So although the concept of NFTs have been around since 2014, the once fringe movement burst into mainstream in 2021 because now NFT translates to money. Right. So being an NFT marketplace owner, let's start with your opinion, Mr. Irsyad. Is NFT a hype, FUD, or here to stay?
Okay, this is very interesting question, and this is one of the most common question that people ask me. And quoted by Mr. Gary Vee himself, he did mention that 90% of, not 90, I think 99% of NFT project will go down, right? So interesting statement, very bold statement. And when it comes to NFT, I love to split into two categories. So the first category is for those who are looking it as a technology. So if you ask me, when it comes to technology will sustain, technology will evolve, technology will improve. So when it comes to technology, we was introduced. The first is actually we was introduced by the invention of blockchain, right? By the invention of smart contracts. So these allow a concept where a token can be issued, can be governed by trustable entity. So which is not a single individual, but a decentralized way of providing authority and checking. And when second area is, again, I mentioned the first is technology, second is project. So NFT projects. What is NFT project? NFT project, it can be games, it can be collectibles, PFP, profile picture, it can be metaverse assets and so on. So this is where that I look into. It can be a fight, it can be something that it can be burst, right? So not many, what I see is not many projects maybe don't have a potential to survive, but for any project that have a strong traction, that solve real world problem, those are the things that can sustain. So again, if we split it into two, we see NFT as a project, as a businesses running utilizing NFT, or a technology itself. When it comes to technology, yes, definitely NFT will stay. The same way where people invent storage system, where people create database, MySQL. Database is a how to say, it's a technology where people can store data. NFT again is a technology where people can utilize it for many purposes. That is going to stay, that is going to last long, and it will evolve. And when it comes to project, so if there's a project that really solve real world problem, if there's a project that really, how to say, empowered based on their objective, those are the things that are going to stay.
So from the digital economy perspective, Mr. Mohan, would you say you share the same opinion?
Yeah, again, my opinions are mine, primarily mine, and not MDEC's opinions, right? Just a disclaimer here. Yeah, I think Irsyad mentioned a lot of points already. I definitely think that NFTs are here to stay. But again, just as Irsyad and everybody else in this space will probably know that 99% of these projects will go down to almost nothing in most cases. I think another way to look at it is that the NFTs are tied to its utility, right? It's tied to its use cases at the back end, right? So obviously, if an NFT that has a use case in providing yield or some form of returns, right? That's obviously going to have a long-term, I guess, it's a long-term survivability, right? And it's usually that those things will usually be tied to some form of physical representations and things like that. But in terms of content, and games and all this, I mean, I probably have a bit more context on this because of my time in this industry, right? Especially games. Most people may not see the same opinions as me, but I look at content as continuously evolving and continuously growing, right? So scarcity in content is, in my opinion, not very practical, as new content keeps coming out, right, and will replace existing ones, right? So again, and it just comes to use cases, right? So if you have something, brands or things that are already have long-term value, right, that is tied to an NFT, will continue to have these long-term values, and products that don't have those values, right, will go down to a niche and very small valuations, right? Again, the space is right now, super driven by investment money and investors, as opposed to real users of systems. But it is definitely the way of the future, at least where I stand.
We'll move into that deeper later. For Jeth, where do you see the component? Do you see it as a hype, or would you say NFTs are a fad, or do you think it's going to be here for the long term?
I personally think it's going to be here for the long term. And I guess the reason people are scared that it's just hype or fun is because of the price. And you guys were right. Price is essentially really what brought NFTs to the mainstream. Like you said, Arravind, it's been around since 2014, but only last year when it really exploded in popularity. And it's because you see pictures of monkeys trading for 300,000 US dollars. So yeah, it would catch people's attention. And now that the prices are trading lower, people are a bit scared and saying it's just hype. But I think what people should focus on is the technology that NFT brings to the tables. I'll speak on in the perspective of blockchain gaming, or in gaming in general. People have been trading game assets for real world money for the longest time, right? For decades now. I think 2 decades now, ever since World of Warcraft came out. RuneScape, even if the publisher says that it's not allowed, you can't trade real money for in-game items, people still do it, right? So there's a real world demand for game items. And what blockchain does and what NFTs do for gaming is it makes the whole trading your game assets for real world cash or for fiat a legitimate thing that you can actually do, and makes ownership that much more real because it's on blockchain. It's public ledger, right? So for gaming, it's definitely here to stay, in my opinion.
Yeah, since you spoke about price earlier, let's take it on a little deeper, right? Okay, so we have seen the market started. We have seen people succeeded in selling a piece of NFT art for 70 million. All right. And on the other side of the world, we had an Indonesian selfie which was purchased for $1 million US, right? So perhaps you guys can share your take on this. Was this just a hype, what might have driven it? Was it overpriced, or do you think it is justified? So what's going on here? We can start with, yeah.
Sorry, is it me?
Yeah, anyone, you can take the baton, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I personally can't speak for the people who bought these art pieces, right? I can't speak for the guy who spent 70 million on people, or nor the guy who bought $1 million worth of selfies. With any, in my opinion, with any new groundbreaking technology, hype always follows, and a subsequent disappointment follows as well from the hype. I think we're at that stage where people might have overvalued some things. I think it's natural with any disruptive technology. Could be overpriced, could have been justified. Only time will tell, right? I can't say now in this position that I'm in what will happen to these pieces of art that they bought. But I do think that it's, again, we should focus on the technology and not just these insane prices or insane profits that people are getting.
Right. So, Irsyad, did you place your bid on any of these arts?
I do collect NFTs.
Yeah.
Definitely. But again, my wallet is private.
Okay.
People like airdrop NFTs to me. But I will share one thing, because I love to correlate to when internet was introduced. You see, back then when internet was introduced, any internet company, you name it, online, as long as it is online stuff, okay, you're doing a pet shop online, everything, the valuation of the company will go up skyrocket until a time where it bursts. And even I did read books, and do you know that Amazon during the .com bubble, they also dropped until 70%. So the valuation of Amazon dropped 70%. What happened to Amazon right now? Again, based on what Jeth mentioned, the technology itself is here to stay. So NFT get a huge adoption. Of course, the first NFT is Bitcoin colors. That was the first introduced. People came up with the concept, and we have a CryptoKitties, which is CryptoKitties start when it was introduced. Is one of the key factors that throttle down Ethereum network. So NFT introduced to solve problem, and one of the problems that NFT solve is actually it can be perpetual royalties and true ownership of something. So before NFTs, what happened to digital artists, digital creators? What happened to people? Beeple himself, he was for so many years producing art and sharing it to people, teaching people. Right? Because of NFT, people who are following Beeple since those early days do that as a token of appreciation. Hey, I love to collect, because blockchain solve ownership. But blockchain has a immutable ledger that shows you who owns what. And because of, again, Beeple allows him to contribute his digital creation. So NFT does solve. Hype does build up based on interest and demand. Based on, there are some people who are, we call it degens, who are, okay, I'm going to buy cheap, I'm going to sell high. So there is also people who are going to buy NFTs to play games, to earn something, because this is a huge success for Philippines, because accessibility one of the largest adoption in Philippines. And even based on Google search trend, I did check right now, Google search trend on NFTs, Philippines is number 5 globally. So again, technology itself is going to sustain, many things are going to be developed, and a lot of players is keep on building right now, including us.
Yeah, so what do you think, Mr. Mohan? Do you think the price are justified, or are you just owning a GIF or a JPEG here?
I think to look at the NFTs, right, if it's just tokenized art, right, then I think most of them are obviously inflated. So you need to see what is, again, the use cases behind it, right? I'm not an art collector. I haven't really bought any NFTs. I've been dropped a lot of NFTs, but I don't, I do believe that NFTs that are used in games, NFTs that are used in generating some form of yield or cash flow, I think these NFTs, some of them may warrant the prices that they're having right now. But I think in general, I would say, everything's overinflated. It's hyped at this point of time. As the technology becomes more and more mass adopted, for the masses, the prices of all this without match, right? What the general, layperson can acquire, right? The accessibility in terms of the tools, in terms of the platforms, in terms of, in general, in fact, the way I see it, it will become seamless, right? With even Web 2.0's kind of interfaces. You won't tell the difference anymore at that point. And then that's where you get the masses, right? But this current pricing, if you ask me, for the ones that are famous at least, it's a rich man's game, right? And it's just, and rich people play rich people's games, similarly. And so we need to find a way to get prices that are more realistic, right? With applications for the masses. Right?
I love to add something. I love to add something based on this, because what I see, we did a market analysis, and we try to study on, especially for us, how we're going to position ourselves. And there's one word is actually NFT is currently becoming a lifestyle. When I say lifestyle, means there is a watch collectors. People collect Rolex, right? People collect handbags. And there is also people in context of NFTs, the things that want to push NFTs beyond whatever people going for flipping or collecting something is when it really solves real world problem. And what is happening right now in NFT space, even there's an event on August, which is people buy NFT as an access pass. So instead of, for example, Jeff just mentioned earlier, he just returned from airport, where what if one day, if you go to a concert, right? If you go to concert, you just buy a ticket, you receive a ticket, you print it, you get a special access. But what if that tickets of that maybe legendary artist is NFT? So it is also part of memorabilia. So the moment where the audience, the mass audience realize, hey, yeah, there is a hype where people can go in cheap. As a collectibles, as I mentioned, some people do love collect watch, but of course at the same time there is also a utility where instead of it was introduced as an arts where people buy it in the millions, but now NFT is shifting to real world utility and trying to solve problem.
It reminds me of your Starbucks card, right?
Yes.
That's what it is.
That's correct.
And if I put it in the most simplest form, right?
Yes, and it is already happened right now. For example, there are some projects in Pentas where the developers already built a utility app where if you buy this, you can get like 10% discount, 20% discount. So yeah, people buy it. I believe there are some content in Malaysia also. People buy like Domino's voucher card.
Right.
It's the same.
Yeah. It's just that you've got the VAYCs and all of these big brands, right? Obviously, that's giving you access to expensive places, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got the Starbucks card that's eventually for the masses.
Yeah.
We're also launching this soon. So so it's not my session now to speak about it, but completely what you guys mean. Yeah, it was interesting, Irsyad, what you spoke earlier. Let's try to understand the specifics a bit more clearer, right? Okay. I think in order to understand, we need to understand the objective before we can perceive the value. So since you own a marketplace, I'm sure you have seen celebrities, athletes, beauty queens and artists launching their personal collections, correct? All right. And what are the objectives here? And how are these NFTs empowering them or their fans, per se?
Okay, because NFT was so trending, and now I'm speaking in the context of marketing. Digital marketing, you remember before there's no position called digital marketing or social media, also even social media managers. When people comes to marketing, position is just a marketing. Social platform was introduced. People use Facebook. There's a strategy on how you can promote your brands on social platform like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and so on. NFT, what if I told you, instead of an entity or institution, your marketing is as expenses, but what if your marketing is people pay for your marketing? So for example, now we have a position for community managers, and community managers is actually on the same pace as marketers. So which means before these brands spend for marketing, but now brands can utilize NFT. Not only they might spend a little, but they also can collect earnings. And there are a few more companies is doing so. In the context of Malaysia, you might find a few more news coming out soon. And those brands is doing a campaign as a rewards contribution. Example, okay, I want to appreciate my VIP customers. So I do a partnership with maybe well-known artists. So this well-known artist produce something as NFT, and I give this as a gift. Same goes with Cryptobilis, which is you give your NFTs pizza, right?
Right.
That is part of the things. Yeah, and brands can use NFT. Brand can see this as a marketing methods where if it is done right, there's a lot of benefit can be pulled out.
Okay, so let's move on, all right? Let's move on from this, and let's talk about profile photo NFT, so PFPs, right? Okay, right here I'm actually referring to the generative NFTs represented by apes, penguins, and iguanas, which are now replacing the once upon pretty face commonly used as profile photos, right? So what are your individual opinions? Were they a success, all right? Or are they the future of profile photo representation in the digital world? And why would you say that? Mr. Mohan, would you take this?
Yeah. I think again, it's tied to any like big brand eventually, right? Like what can you create around the brand at the end of the day? So otherwise, it's just a passing fad, right? It's just a meme at this point of time. It's cute. I want to have a monkey face at this point of time because everybody gets it. Obviously, the gorilla has a lot of value, and and people immediately associate you as a rich person if you have a gorilla and understand that, right? But in the coming months, right, the way I see it, it's just going to be there's going to be hundreds, thousands, and maybe hundreds of thousands of projects coming out, right? It's like any other form of content, right? And they're all going to be vying for attention. They're all going to be vying for new and people are looking for new trends, new stuff, and all these are going to get replaced at some point of time. Unless you maintain some luxury brand status, right? Then I guess that continues on. So that's really how I see this profile pic. I'm more than happy to have my own profile pic as an NFT that I use, right? And then turn it into maybe I don't know. I'm just creating this on the fly. Some kind of journey album I can see on the blockchain, right? Historically, how I've changed my look, right, over the years. Which I'm just thinking something that would be cool, right? So yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, for Jeth, what do you think? Do you think for the future digital world, people want to remain anonymous, and they are just putting up these PFPs as their digital identity? Do you see this happening?
Yes, definitely. I think NFT PFPs are the first generation of what people want to be represented as when they present themselves in the metaverse. So it starts off with JPEGs, right? Or these pictures, still pictures, but eventually these NFTs and the NFT brands in particular who are actually building and not the ones who are just vaporware or just raising money for nothing. The guys who are actually building will eventually move on to having models for you to use in the different metaverses. So then it becomes closer to your identity. It's something that you choose to be. In the metaverse, you can be anyone, right? In real life, you're not given a chance to pick, right? You are who you're born. But then in the metaverse, you are given a chance, and it just so happens that people want to be gorillas, or they want to be apes, or they want to be pictures, doodles, whatever, right? I think that we will move on towards deeper representation once that happens, and once we move on to really spending more time on the internet, a la in the metaverse.
I think based on everything we spoke, we see the NFT values are primarily driven by community demand, correct? So there's a reason why the ape is more expensive than the iguana, or we have a Malaysian version of the apes now. We have got the Malayan apes, if I'm not mistaken, right? So maybe it sounds a bit repetitive, but let's try to understand. Doesn't NFT actually require a better utility? What can be its other value propositions, Irsyad?
Okay, other than value appreciation or a sense of belongings by owning, because there's some things for, but I'm quite interested in the things mentioned by Jeth, where back then we were born based on papers. We read newspapers, books, but generation nowadays, when they born, they already have a tablet on their hand. They have a smartphone. The way the next generation is going to perceive on the digital world will be different, and it will be so norm for them in the near future to be represented as whatever avatars. So in context of your question is basically when it comes to NFT, other than PFP or other than buying that, utility is the only things that will allow NFT to be sustainable. Why PFP is expensive? It doesn't just a JPEG. It allows you to be part of a group. It allows you to be an entity of a group. Other than BAYC, I want to mention there is also a DAOs where people create DAOs like Nouns DAOs. People are creating those who are traded as high volume, whereas you can empower whatever proposal that people are going to create. You can empower artists, you can bring up, you can uplift people. So to own that PFP in a sense of belonging, in the sense of the true purpose of that community is something that people can be proud of. Of course, other than, I can buy that cheap, sell it high, but normally if it goes back, why those certain NFT is expensive? Because there is a true purpose of why they are building this group of people, which is it can be part of sense of belonging throughout their mission objective on what they are trying to do.
Right, let's move a little bit on a tangent. We got a question from the audience, right? I think this question is directed to Mr. Mohan. How supportive are the Malaysian government in regards to NFT?
I think there are various stances within the government itself. There are many agencies, many ministries, and so forth, right? So again, I'm not going to speak for all of them, but in general, I would say they are supportive or at least interested in the space. Within MDEC, where my department and what we are doing, we are definitely very, very interested in NFTs, because I see NFTs heavily related to gaming, right? Heavily related to digital content, right? As Jeth has already earlier mentioned, right, how NFTs, or rather the behaviors of what NFTs represent, right, has already been widely used and adopted by gaming communities for the longest time. The big difference right now is that there's ownership of these NFTs by players. Again, technology is still very early at this point in time, and how this plays out is going to be interesting. But we definitely see a long-term change coming for digital content space, at least. I think this applies to a lot of the spaces, but again, within my department and MDEC as a whole, I think we do look at there's a huge amount of interest in the blockchain and NFT space. Yeah, and we are working on some initiatives in the near future, right, to promote and create adoption within this space. I can't say more until those plans are clearer, actually. Yeah.
Currently, I'm seeing the timer that we have only got 2 minutes left. Tons of questions.
With the time.
Yeah, I think we are looking for. I think it's a very interesting topic. Perhaps we can speak to the organizers to extend it by another 2 minutes, right? Because I think the next one is very important when we speak about the utilities of NFTs, right? Okay, and I think this is a question for Mr. Jeth. I think it's his forte. We are seeing a development in the gaming, music, sports, and even wellness, right? Where NFTs are representing in-game, in-sport assets with new concepts like play to earn, walk to earn, sleep to earn, right? Could you elaborate how does this concept work and how is this model sustainable?
Okay. These concepts, right, play to earn or blockchain gaming, is tied to a very simple premise. For your time, knowledge, and skills that you spend playing a game, you are compensated accordingly, right? The better you are at the game, the more time you spend on it, the higher your compensation. And this was first pioneered by Axie Infinity. We all know how that model turned out. It's not the most sustainable of models. But I think that we're right now in a period of discovery to find what tokenomic model will be truly sustainable. It's not something that I think is impossible. I think it's very, very possible to develop a model that is sustainable. We've seen these virtual game economies already exist in previous Web 2 games. We're in MMORPGs which have real virtual economies, functioning economies. So I think it will only be a matter of time and a matter of effort from the builders in the space before they make something a truly sustainable model. But going beyond just blockchain gaming, right? I think this movement will eventually translate to spending more time online. I think play to earn or blockchain gaming is the first step to having a true metaverse. If people wanted to truly spend more time online, they need to get compensated for it, right? People here, at least in the Philippines, if majority of the people love spending time on Facebook, right? They're always on Facebook, and if they're not working, they're on Facebook. But I bet if you told people that you could pay them to go on Facebook, they wouldn't go to work anymore, right? So I think blockchain gaming is just the first step into being compensated for spending time online. And eventually, when we cross that line or we go deeper into that path, it opens up new doors to really being plugged in 100% of the time, a la Ready Player One.
Thank you, Jeth. I think since we are running out of time, okay, let's have a last one. What would be the main message each of you would like the audience to take away?
I'll start very simple. Let's give a talk. Imagine the session right now, we talk about internet when it was first introduced, right? It is so slow. People can't imagine that you can listen to music online, which is at that time, there's a radio. There's so much technological innovation that can spark with that type of a framework. NFT and blockchains, it will further allow many other things, and don't limit ourselves to just buying a jetpack. But what we are doing right now is actually we are cracking our head to further empower this innovation and to further brings innovation to benefits of people.
Okay, Mr. Mohan, do you have any key takeaways? You're muted.
Sorry. I think there are two angles that I want to bring up. So at least in the industries that I work in, there are two views, right? One's very pro and the other one's very against. So in a way, you've got maximalists and you've got those that are against. So for the for the pro guys that are pro, I think there's no convincing. It's preaching to the preached. I think it's just taking a step back sometimes and not get high on your own hopiums, right? And on the other hand, I think it's for those that are pure skeptics. On the other hand, I think it's important to look at things from a different lens. You just can't take existing models and try to extrapolate, right, what you have. I think you need to look at things from a completely different dimension, right? Sometimes it's particularly like in the games industry, everyone says that there's no real use case, right, for NFTs, because everything that NFTs bring is already executable, right, without any of this Web3 stuff. But it really opens up new models, I think, new models of ownership and new users, right, a new generation of users that will be using things from a completely different angle, right, that we may not even consider, right? Even for me, when XE first exploded, right, I couldn't, because I came from traditional publishing. I looked at it, why this game has the worst form of accessibility for any kind of game, right? And then, when I realized there's such a huge community and there are other use cases behind it, it didn't occur to me. So yeah, that's just my take on it. Yeah.
Jeth, you have anything to add? Where should they get started, or where should the community, what's the key takeaway from here?
I think what's needed really is a game where people are willing to spend on and not expect a return.
Right.
Ultimately, it boils down to that. If the majority of your participants or players are there to extract value from the game, then the game will never survive, right? There needs to be that balance of people who actually spend money but no expectation of getting yield or getting a return, and they just simply spend because they like the game.
Right.
So it takes beautiful game design. It takes beautiful game economics for this to happen.
Right. Okay, guys, thank you all for joining us today. The session was really insightful. See you guys all soon physically. And I'm sending this back to the host for today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Arravind. Thank you, Jeth.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, have a good day, guys.